Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Lindsay Lerner, and you're listening to The Cost of the Status Quo. More people than ever are questioning why they do what they do and forging their own path. And on this show, I sit down with these entrepreneurs, trailblazers, creatives, and overall awesome beings to discuss the ideas, the opportunities, and the overall tips and tricks they're using so that the rest of us can do the same. This is The Cost of the Status Quo. Today we are here with Meg Frampton, an incredible artist entrepreneur. Meg is half of the founding duo of the indie rock band Meg and Dia, for which she plays guitar, sings, and writes. When Meg isn't creating music, she makes jewelry, and if that weren't enough, she has multiple businesses and has had multiple businesses, including a coffee shop, which is definitely one of my favorites. Now, she's tapping into more of who she is and doing some personal exploration, which I personally can't wait to dive into. Today, Meg is here to share a bit about her story, the tips, tricks, and habits she's learned along the way. Listeners, thank you so much for listening. It would mean the world to me if you subscribed, rated, and reviewed this. Welcome, Meg. Thanks so much for making the time to be here.
Thank you for having me. That's so fun hearing an intro. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, I'm so glad that you're here. I've learned so much from our conversations over the years, so I'm glad we get to share it out. Could you share a bit about where you're from and what that was like?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Southern Utah. I had a pretty religious upbringing, very conservative, even though I personally wasn't Mormon. But, being in that environment, I pick up a lot of that, a lot of those views and perspectives. My dad was an entrepreneur, and he was very supportive of my sister and I, who I'm in the band with, being artists and going after our dreams. And he always went after his crazy dreams that made no sense to anybody else. But I think seeing him do that over and over again, it always instilled this, okay, I'll try this thing. And when we wanted to be in our band, he was like, okay, what do you need? You need this, and off you guys go. And off we went in our SUV. We didn't have a van when we first started out. So that was really great, growing up with that kind of father. Mother was always super supportive. And my sister and I started our band when we were 18. So not even, super young. We couldn't even play at bars. So we were playing at barber shops and in parks and malls. It was very funny.
That's amazing.
But yeah, that's where we started out.
I love it. And then were you touring or playing shows locally? And then how did that begin to expand further out and further out?
So we were playing a lot of shows locally, and which is how I view starting out any creative project or entrepreneurial pursuit, actually, is because you got to start where you are, and like really do everything you can where you are. So my sister and I took photos, I cut them, I printed them and cut the paper out and stuck it into CDs. And we had physical boxes of those in our trunk.
Throwback CDs.
Having the mindset of believing in what we were doing, just going after it, regardless of having anything in the beginning. We didn't have a manager, we didn't have a record label. And it's really one of our main goals that we had back then was, I just want to get signed by a record label. And we had this record label that we wanted. And we did get signed by that record label eventually, like 1 or 2 years in, which was kind of amazing. And then upgraded to being on a major label for a while. Or I don't know if it's upgraded, but, went to a different label for a while. But I think, being prepared and having had all that practice and playing those shows, we were ready for when the big band came through to our local venue. Then their merch guy, actually, he wasn't even a manager. He saw us and he was like, hey, my name's John Cheese. Here's my business card. When you guys are ready to go, let me know. So I remember taking his card and looking at my sister and thinking, okay, his name's John Cheese. That's probably fake. I don't know if this guy can actually do anything for us. But I held on to that card and I took a chance. And like I said, we got all of our stuff ready to go. We had a car, we were playing shows, we had our CDs, and I called up John Cheese and I said, okay, I think that we're ready to be a band. And so he said, okay, come out to LA. And that was the first time we've ever been outside of Utah or gone and played a show in LA. First time we went to LA, we were just so green. And we pulled up and we stayed in his living room floor and all tumbled out of our SUV into his floor. played our first show, our showcase show for a bunch of indie labels. And we went into the first indie label and he took us up the elevator. We got the elevator and we started throwing our CDs at the janitor because we didn't know who was who, like who was the AR guy. We were just so excited to be like in the building. So when we played that first showcase show, it was actually very bad. It was terrible. We still didn't really know how to play our instruments or sing well or perform. Like everything was really off. But we got interest from two different labels that day. And I think it was because one, the songwriting was there. So they saw something in that. But I think, even though it was very undeveloped at that time, very raw, but I also think that they saw like these two kids who were willing to get out there and do the thing and put themselves out there and get shows behind them. And so yeah, I think that's something that labels look for, people who are willing to get behind your creative work is, are these guys willing to make the effort even without this? Do they expect just to show up or are they going to actually do something when we invest in them?
Was there a moment when you and Dia really, you made the decision to be intentional about starting the band and really fully committing to music? Or was it, we have instruments, let's figure it out?
We were very intentional. And I don't know how we got the idea that once we made these intentions and set this intentions, we're going to do this, that it was going to work out. And now, we're in our mid 30s. We've been doing this for over a decade. And it's harder for us now because I don't know, the ego and the doubts have come in, and we're like, I don't know if we can do this again. Do you think we can make another record? But back then I remember Dia sat down, and Dia's the singer in my band and my sister for everybody who doesn't know my band. But she sat down with our drummer we were hiring and, or not even hiring, the drummer who we were giving cookies to play for us. But we pulled up into his house and went down to his basement and had our first makeshift audition, which was very funny. Again, this was before we had anything. We had nothing. We had a box of CDs and a dream. And I remember Dia sat him down and she looked him in the eyeballs and she was like, okay, we are very serious. We need you to drop out of college. We need you to commit. I'm surprised she didn't have a handwritten document for him to sign that day. But I just remember, and he was like, "Oh, she means business." And I was also like, "Oh, are we a band?" Yeah. And she's always been like that. And we just had this unwavering conviction that this was going to work out and we were going to get there and you could either come on this ride or not. And we did.
You absolutely did. That's been an interesting theme that's popped up through several of these episodes so far is, how did I do that?
Yeah.
You're so young, you're so naive, and you just have this stick-to-itiveness, whether it's ignorance, I don't know what it is, audacity, a combination of both. But that's been coming up a lot where people are like, I don't know how I did it, but I did. And that was it.
I do think there is something to that naivety. You don't know how hard and unreasonable you're being. And then later, I think it turns from the naivety that doesn't get you through, but it's the experience and the wisdom. And you're like, okay, I don't know how I did that, but I did that. So I can do it again. That's what I'm leaning on now. My sister and I are just, we're not on any labels now. We're about to start writing our next record. And we have these dreams of these bands we go on tour on. And in a way, it feels like a rebooting and a starting over because we haven't been very active. It, like I said, it takes a bit of oh, how are we gonna do this again? And I had to sit her down all over again. And I was like, Dia, what's your dream? We did our dream before. What's our dream now? And so she told me her dream. And actually she, before our dream was that we want to get signed to this record label, and we got it. And now she said that her dream was first she's like, I want to play Coachella. And I was like, okay, cool. But do you really want to play Coachella? Is that a thing that everybody else is doing? She's like, well, I would want to go on tour with this band and make this kind of record. And she wanted to go on tour with a rock band and she wanted to make a rock record. And we've been playing, singer-songwriter music, pop music the past few years. But I was like, okay, I like your dream. I didn't have a clear vision for a band in that moment. So I was like, let's make this rock record. Let's find a producer. Let's do the thing. The next day, we go in with this guy that we were writing a song with, who was a producer, and we know him kind of well. And we kind of sat down and he's like, what are you guys wanting to do? And we said, oh, we're thinking about recording a rock record and doing it the old school way of going into the studio and doing, like analog instruments as opposed to digital instruments these days, make it a full album instead of, as opposed to making singles and releasing them on Spotify individually. He was like, I was thinking about making a rock record with you guys and just like doing it the old school way. And I looked at Dia and I was like, every time we decide the thing that we want to do and we take that first step, it's becomes this like effortless, like easy, like we're still needing to make effort. We're going to still need to write the songs and do the work and whatever. But people come out of the woodwork like, hey, can I hook you up with this producer? There's this other big rock producer that she got on the phone with and it went really well. We might do some songs with him. That happened the next week after we decided to do that. It's just crazy how things fall into place when you do the crazy thing.
Right. And being honest about it and open about it and asking the question. And I think that's what's so magical about the two of you. Like you just said, you're like, I didn't really have necessarily a vision, but you know how to ask the right questions.
I always want to try to ask the question of what's the big dream? Like, what's the scariest, biggest? It doesn't have to be scary. It's scary for us. Maybe some people aren't scared. Like, what's the crazy thing? Because like I said, we started out and I was like, what would you want to do? She's like, Coachella. And I was like, okay, that's nice. But like out of anything, and then you really get down to it, which I think is really important. Because, I realized the other day, I'm middle-aged. I'm 37, which technically, if you think about what people like actually live to, I'm middle-aged, So like, I want to make sure I'm doing like the thing.
You have an incredible sense of adventure. And that's, I think, one of the things that I love most about you. And I mean, you've spent, how long did you say? A decade now plus on the road making music. We were on tour together for Amber Lou at the end of 2019, literally moments before COVID hit. And so whether it's being on tour or just having an adventurous lifestyle, what are some of those practices that you've built into your days to feel some sense of stability to be able to really lean into that adventure?
It's really good to be able to have both feet on the ground and your head in the air, like which is what I really like. I think that I'm a spiritual person, but I also try to be like very practical and realistic, like at the same time, like needing both. And so in order to have those adventures, you're right. Like, where's home base? What does my home feel like? What does my routine feel like? And then that makes me feel like I'm grounded enough to be able to explore. So some of the practices that I have are, I'm a very big fan of doing morning pages, Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way. So I do that every morning. I really enjoy reading oracle cards. So this is kind of part of my spiritual practice and just like dropping in, connecting to them in some way, taking a few moments to do nothing, like to not have Netflix on, to not have music on, to not be talking to somebody, just to like literally sit on my couch and do nothing and just kind of like be bored for a bit. Like that really brings me back to my center and grounds me. I love aesthetics and creating beauty around me. So whether that's like wardrobe or how I'm designing my home to make it reflect beauty, to make myself feel nourished. And I also love elements of design and visual aesthetics because I have been doing a lot of focusing on self-growth and actually separating myself from my identities in the ways that I've known myself before, whether that's a band member or a sister, and then coming home to my own space and thinking, okay, when I don't have all of these things that have defined myself for my whole life, who am I really? What does she look like? How does she express herself? How does she create a home? How does she feel at home? And so recently I've gone on this little kick of like being a cowgirl, which is so funny because I've never been a cowgirl. Like my friends have come to Austin and been like, all right, let's go get some boots and a hat. I'm like, okay, I'll go with you, but I don't understand this lifestyle at all. And then one day it kicked in, and it's because of that sense of adventure and that connection to nature and the earth. And it's been fun to like get to know that and then express that in how I design my home and how I dress. One other thing that I like to do when it comes to creating a stable base is learning how to deal with my emotions.
The ultimate.
Practicing that at home, because when I do travel or when I am on tour, things can go really wrong.
Can they?
For example,
Can they go wrong on tour?
Yes, they can get so out of whack. Relationships with people, just huge blows to my ego when a show doesn't go the way I want it to go. Falling in love with a band and a guy on tour, that tends to happen, and then having him not be interested, my heart gets, whatever it is. Like now I know I've done a lot of visualization of like the highest version of myself. And so my personal visualization goes something like I see myself reach out my own hand in the dark. And then whatever comes up is like the most spectacular version of me. Last night I did it and I had like, I don't know, a 50s immaculate hair wave. And I had this glitter dress made out of like literal like stars. But mainly it's about like, again, I have that visual aesthetic. So that's important. That's empowering for me. But the main thing is like, I looked into my own eyes and I always see like the cosmos glowing in them back at me. And she's just like confident AF. And she knows how to make decisions. She knows how to move forward. She knows what she's wanting. And then when I can come back to that, when I get into my real life and I'm traveling or I'm at home or whatever, I can still work with people. I can still fall in love with people. But like when things don't work out or don't go the way I want them to, I can come back to that and be like, okay, but still I'm a badass.
Absolutely. And that's how you view your spiritual practice really impacting not only your personal life and your personal experience, but also your professional life, because I mean, they're one and the same. So along that, I've heard you say, and I know how much you love art and design and how it's very important to you. Do you have your own definition of what art is?
I think that I've never thought about what my definition would be, but I think it would be creative expression and connecting to my authentic individuality and then having the courage to share it. I think that last bit is the most important bit. That's the part where I'm like, ooh, this feels really vulnerable. Some people, for sure, some people are not going to like it. In fact, they're going to disagree with me about my own opinion about myself or my own opinion about what I think is good about what I create. They will say that is bad, that is wrong. And still, I say, I'm doing it anyway. And I might be wrong. I might have the wrong opinion. This might not be a good song, but like I'm standing somewhere with a certain perspective at any given moment. And, it's my creative responsibility and honor to share what that is, as I'm evolving, as I'm growing. And of course, I'm going to change. And it's okay if I'm wrong. I'm going to be wrong. Okay. I'll be right sometimes too.
Exactly. Is that part of the reason why you've gotten into more of these entrepreneurial endeavors? Do you have a different or possibly the same definition of entrepreneurship?
The things that I've done have been very visual. So I did the jewelry, which is artsy, and then I'm decorating, I'm designing something that you wear. The other thing I did, the coffee shop, my favorite part of that was designing the space, creating like a beautiful place where people could come together and create art or have conversations. But I loved, creating a beautiful space and then making something really high quality that I thought brought value to people's lives. And then right now I'm jumping into learning about sex, actually. and thinking about how to share that, because it's been something that's been very important to my personal growth, and something that I think could use so much help in our culture and society right now. Sex is sometimes looked at as like this shameful, crude, embarrassing, like deep, dark secret. And the way that like I said, I'm just starting out right now, so I don't really know how this is going to go. But the way I'm envisioning it is to incorporate how I view sex with like beautiful images and in nature, or making sure the aesthetic it shows like joy and peace and naturalness, and combining the two. I think that will help kind of change the perception of it.
And do you have any insight as to how you've been able to create that space for yourself? Not necessarily how you're going about teaching it to others, but how you've gotten to this place, because it seems like over the years you've been able to really tap into your own rhythm and your own flow. So if you could share a little bit more about what that process has been like, because it's so interesting.
My creative endeavors and entrepreneurial endeavors throughout my life have come in waves. So, and cycles and seasons. So to me, it's a lot about like body wisdom. And also, I get the sense that there's like this ocean or current underneath me, and I'm like a ship on it. And it's not something that I can totally like feel. Like, it doesn't feel like pain or love or some sort of sensation, but it's just like this sort of subtle inner knowing of this current that I can kind of tap onto. And a lot of it comes through dreams and like other people saying things to me that they normally wouldn't say. So it's like these little clues. And so for music, for instance, there was a time when the wave was just like, whew, all this energy is here. We're doing this thing. And then it like really went down, and I was like, oh, who am I if I'm not a musician? And then I had a dream about creating this like little robot guy, like a dream, a sleeping dream. It wasn't like, oh, it's an inspirational dream. It's like a little dream. And then that wave came in of like, oh, I gotta do this jewelry thing. And then it like went down, and I just felt like, it's gone. Like the energy's gone after a few years, you know? And then the coffee shop thing was, one day my mom was like, hey, you should start a coffee shop in Utah. And I was like, no, that's stupid. I don't know anything about a coffee shop. I don't want to move back to Utah. But, my mom she's never said like, you should do this ever. And so I was like, that was life. That was a hint,
Right. Listen to that.
Yeah, listen to that. And then I got this wave of energy that's like, all right, we're doing this now. And then it's back down. And so this last one, though, has been terrifying to me, because the period of the down wave has been long. It's been years. And so I've kind of just been tinkering around like, all right, what's it going to be this time? Like, I can't just like sit here, like, but sometimes it takes some time. And I've heard this period of time, and I don't know if this is correct, but I've heard this word called the negretto, which is like a period of time sort of in the darkness. And I look at it as like you're in the dirt, like where the roots are, like percolating this new dream, right?
Oh, that's such a good way to look at it.
Yeah. Realizing that I needed this time in this negretto to develop myself and develop my life in order to offer my next offering. And I didn't realize that at the time, because I have this thing in my head of like, I need to be productive. I need to be making money. I need to be doing something, like, or otherwise, like, who am I? But then I was like, the wave's not here. Maybe I'll run out of money and be homeless in the street, but the wave's not here. So we're going to trust this for a bit, and we're going to take this ride. And I did. And I really think I needed it. I needed to develop myself. I needed to figure out more who I am, because, like, we change. And I went through a big period of like releasing old ideas and things about the way I thought, and like developing this new person, and kind of just creating like this whole new life. Like, I moved, started a new job, got out of a relationship, changed everything.
In that moment where you didn't know anything and you're in that darkness and in the dirt, that from a visual perspective is so impactful, I think. Are there any ways that you've learned, or anything that you intentionally did to be comfortable in that unknowing?
At first, it just sucked. I had no idea what I was doing. It was really hard. I cried a lot. Just like didn't really know what I went through a really dark depression actually. I spent a lot of time by myself. I felt scared a lot. Like there were many times where I just went to sleep and then I woke up and I was like, okay, we're doing this again. Another day. Just had no idea, you know? But being around people I love, doing stupid shit like working out with them or whatever, just being like, okay, that person's living a normal life and knows what they're doing. I'm just going to hang around them for a couple hours and then go back into my not knowing. But one of the things that I think really, really helped was trying, even though I didn't know, but trying to see like if there are things that brought me pleasure or joy. And I didn't know back then. Like I said, my whole life was turned upside down. I was in this darkness I didn't know. But so I did a lot of things. I went to, it looked a lot like a midlife, quarter life crisis, like one of those things that like a woman goes through after a breakup. But it really helped. Like I took a ceramics class. I went to Paris. I started listening to Paul Simon, painting, watercoloring. And then, eventually I would be like, I would find little things like, ooh, I love watching the sunset. Or, man, I love putting my hands in dirt. I love pulling plants out of the ground. I love looking at the moon. Coffee makes me so happy. Or having somebody touch me and make eye contact with me and like connect without fear. It wasn't these like, I guess Paris is kind of a big deal, but it was like the small exploratory moments of like, okay, I'm really sad. I'm really lost. I'm so scared. I don't know how this week's going to turn out. But right now, this single origin African pour over coffee is everything. And I can just sink into this cup and enjoy it. And then once I started doing that, like at first it just felt fake. Like I was like, I am faking being like content or finding any kind of peace. I am faking this. But then I was like, I think it really retrained my body to like feel pleasure and to like be okay with it. And for me, a huge thing was realizing like I'm worthy of feeling pleasure.
Right now, when you're exploring everything that's calling you when it comes to sex and being curious in that way, I follow you on Instagram, which I hope other people will too. But the posts that I've seen, I imagine, take a lot of courage to put out there and to dig deep. I'm even more impressed by you if that's that naturally comes to you, because I read it, I'm like, this is magical and this is amazing. I'm like, damn, that must have been really hard. So my question would be, one, is it hard? Is it not hard? And then the other part of that would be, what are those steps in that like very tactical self-talk for when it is difficult to share those things that are important to you?
It's scary every single time. And I honestly don't know that will ever go away. And in fact, I feel more fear now than I ever have, which kind of makes me feel like that's why this is the most important thing for me to be sharing. And so what I do before any time that I share something about sex, I literally say a little prayer and I'm like, please, life, let whoever this message needs to reach, like let it reach them. Like let it help them. And I'm just going to do this. And then I just do it. Sometimes I get scared and I take it down. I've done that before. Like it's been too much and I take it down. But it's a practice, and I have to take these little tiny baby steps like, okay, today I'm going to say the word orgasm in a post and I'll spend all day being like, can we do it? I don't know. Should I put a 0 so I'm not spelling it out? I don't know. Like just getting into my head, but then eventually I'm like, okay, today I'm going to post that. And I do. And I don't die. And so then the next day I'm like, okay, I'm going to try posting it again. And it's like, with all the other things I've done, being in a band, starting the coffee shop, I'm like, I never felt this much fear. I was always like, I'm scared. I'm scared of performing. And this one, it's like, I just feel like the terror But I'm just gonna do it. I'm creating like this course right now about this really specific esoteric spiritual style of sex that I think only 6 people on Reddit know about and might be interested in. But I just open up my Google Doc and I go, okay, we're gonna make an outline. I don't know that I'll ever dare to make this course, but we're gonna make an outline. And then I just keep doing those little tiny things. And then eventually I'm gonna be like, we're gonna share it. Maybe nobody will ever buy it. Or maybe nobody will ever watch it or benefit from this. But sometimes it's kind of like it's about the creation process. It's about me walking through that fear. Like regardless of what the outcome is, regardless of who hears my song, regardless of who comes to my show, my spirit wants to make it. My spirit wants to do it. And if I don't do it, then I'm not going toward what makes me feel vibrant and alive. I'm staying where I'm stagnant and I'm not growing.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that and the knowledge and the love that you have for everything that you've talked about. That's what's just so magical about always talking to you. And I think before we wrap up, I'd love to hear, we ask every guest, what is the worst piece of advice that you've ever gotten? And then on the other side of that, what is the best piece of advice that you've ever gotten?
Let's start with the worst. The worst piece of advice is like, you have to work hard and struggle. Effort is required, but like right effort will happen when I'm calm and when I understand where I'm going, when I understand my mission, and it can be fun. It does not have to be this painful struggle. It can be a fun ride. I've done that several times, and it's just, which door do you want to walk through? What adventure do you want to have? That's my belief. And then the best advice is, the next one is always better. And I've applied that to the next relationship, the next business, the next piece of art I'm creating, whatever it is. And regardless of whether that's true or not, it's helped me let go of the past and not be so attached to what has happened, and just be like, okay, if it didn't stay in my life, it's not for me. And like, it's a practice in trusting life. Like whatever's coming, whatever left, I trust that it was supposed to leave. And whatever's coming, I trust that it's going to be better, and it's going to match like where I am at that stage after I grow.
I could talk to you for the rest of the day. I know you have things to do. I'm avoiding what things I have to do.
Yeah.
But on that note, thank you so much for sharing all of that. That was beautiful and amazing. And I appreciate your time.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed having our conversation today.
Thank you for listening to The Cost of the Status Quo and learning the wisdom, stories, and ideas that will have you feeling inspired and ready to take on the world. If you've enjoyed this, please remember to share, rate, and review. It means the world to me and the team putting it all together. If you're looking for more information, you can find us at costofthestatusquo.com or on Instagram at costofthestatusquo. If you've got any questions or curiosity about me, you can find me at lindseylerner.com. That's LindseyLerner.com, or on Instagram at Lindsey Lerner. Thanks again for listening. Hope you have an awesome day.